Hello and welcome to another episode of Building Minnesota RØKKR. My name is Ashley, aka Midnite, the director of content here for the team. Here with Brett Diamond, the COO. We're hanging out. It's our first ever podcast from the time we're in right now, quarantine land, or stay at home land. Brett, this has been an unprecedented time, obviously, in just I think like our lifetimes. Like I'm gonna definitely recount this as like, holy cow, remember when this crazy thing happened? It's been pretty nuts, but here we are, man. We're doing the podcast remotely, and I'm excited.
Yeah, podcast took a couple week hiatus while we shifted to working from home, but it's good to be back in action here, and nice to get a chance to connect with the fans again.
Yeah, I think it's super awesome to get back in it. I feel like now is a better time as ever to start this back up. Give people to something to look forward to. You know, a lot of people were. I get a lot of compliments. I'm sure you do too. Like in person, like, hey, I love the podcast because of this reason. And so, when we were not doing it, like you said, because we're getting into the work from home vibe. There's some process changes that we all need to adjust to, obviously, in this time, because we're not all in the HQ every day seeing each other. So we had to get up with that. And then, I mean, we've been like pretty busy considering the time we're in. We've still been doing quite a lot. We haven't shut down. Luckily, we can get a little bit more into that. But I think, yeah, for the most part, we've been pretty busy, and now I'm looking forward to getting back into this. I think we'll do weekly episodes, and I'd love to, now that we are remote, it actually, from a technical setup point of view, it makes it a little bit easier for us to host guests, because all they have to do is pop into a Discord and we can easily hear and see them. So would love to have guests on in the future too. If you guys have any recommendations for who you'd want to see on the show, definitely let us know.
Yeah, I would love to hear from the fans who they want to see. We'll do a couple episodes where maybe we take some fan questions. We can figure out all that. I mean, it's been a pretty interesting month. I mean, like you said, what we're going through here, it's unprecedented, not just in our life, but even our parents. I mean, if everything went back to business as usual tomorrow, which obviously it's not going to, this would already be the most significant event of all of our parents' life. I mean, really, there hasn't been this type of disruption to day-to-day life in America, or the world, since really World War II. Maybe even you have to go back further than really probably to the last flu pandemic in 1918. Right, so this is a time where we'll be looking back on this time period for the rest of our lives, about what took place here. I mean, we're going to try to keep the vibe for this podcast, happy and upbeat, right? There's a lot of things going on in the world that can pull you in the other direction. We want to try to focus on positivity here, but there's no question that every day we're thinking about the people that are on the front lines of this fight, the healthcare workers, doctors, nurses, delivery drivers, people working in the stores that are still. I mean, those are the things that are keeping society functioning now. Which those are the most important jobs in the world, right? I mean, we're lucky that we have the opportunity to continue our lead, continue online, to continue to create content in whatever form it is. And we're not going to dwell on the magnitude of the moment too much for podcasts, right? I think people more just hear what we're up team is doing. But you definitely have to take a moment to salute the people that are truly on front lines of this, as well as obviously the people battling.
Yeah, I think it's. I mean, we both already kind of touched on it, but it is really just this unprecedented time, and I mean, it happened over something similar to this happened over 100 years ago. There's no like handbook, especially with where we're at, in society. There's no like, oh yeah, you just do this and it'll pass. Like it's just so wild right now. I think to that point though, it is awesome to still have, this to look forward to for us to do, and for the folks who, are still wanting to keep in the loop with us, keep in the loop with the team, whether that's obviously how the matches are going, and how the players are doing, how the staff is doing, and how we're all adjusting to this time. I think it's important to document stuff like this, and to create during this time. I feel super stoked, just kind of to touch on the tournaments that we've still been able to do. We're one of the rare kind of, I guess, competitive sports, esports, competition based thing that can still happen and still function. Yeah, playing online creates its own set of issues, and there's competitive integrity at the highest level is played in person on LAN. But definitely, given the circumstances that we've all found ourselves in, I think the fact that we're still able to function as a league, and function as a team, still create awesome content, still play, still grind it out, still practice. I just feel really lucky to still be in that situation, and I think I'm hoping that is providing a lot of entertainment for fans as well, and not to mention that. But listen, I know what I just said. Like online and LAN are a little different, but at the last LAN event, made the grand finals, and the first online event made the grand finals. There's clearly some consistency there. So, I mean, what's your reaction, Brett, kind of been to the shift to online, and not just that, but also like how the team has still performed to the level that I mean we kind of expect at this point.
Yeah, it's certainly been an interesting past month. And going into it, honestly, I wasn't sure what to expect. I certainly learned a lot about the technical side of everything over the past month, more than I ever expected to need to. A lot of time talking with the coaches and the players about what they need. I think the league did a good job getting everything to a point where it's up and running. Obviously, there's some room for improvement on certain things. They acknowledge that they're working to fix those. We're not in Chicago, quote unquote, in Chicago for the next tournament. But it'll be interesting to see sort of the second go around. But it's a huge lift to get all of that production
It is.
out of a studio environment into the cloud. And but from a team standpoint, first of all, enormous credit to the coaches and the players
Seriously.
for staying focused, continuing to work hard and prepare. And that was probably my biggest takeaway from the overall situation, is that we continue to have, obviously bias, but our
Very
coaches
biased.
continue to show that they are the best coaching staff in the league. Our players have that dedication, all the things that we've been talking about, and to be able to stay focused, all of the things going on in the world, and the natural distractions that come with switching the format of the league and everything that goes into it, not being together under one roof the way they had planned and they were throughout the season, to still take second in the tournament, to bounce back after that first round loss in Chicago. That's just so encouraging in terms of how this team continues to just be true professionals. At the end of the day, that's what we keep seeing from these guys. These guys are professional every.
Yeah, I think that's actually a really good call out. Is when you're switching the format to online, there's a lot more, and I think I'm maybe kind of just, this is my viewpoint of a lot of the players in the league, not just our guys, but if things go wrong online, it's a little bit easier to say, well, it was online, it's chalked, whatever. And so to come out that first match, I mean, yes, all three of those maps versus Chicago were very close, but we did get 3 out. I mean, especially against, Chicago's a good team. The first time we played against them, we took the L there as well. And, based on our prior history, especially recently, losing to FaZe and then beating them, losing to Dallas and then beating them, I kind of was expecting that same type of rebound against Chicago. And although the maps were really close, we did still lose. And so to know that the team, took it on the chin, move on to the next day, and you reset and you regroup. It's real easy though to get in that headspace and be like, oh, it's online, like it doesn't matter as much and whatever. Like, it's really awesome to see the resilience of the team that they've been able to showcase throughout the season. I think this last weekend, or whenever it was, the weekend before last, was when we saw that kind of come into play. Like the guys were able to, take the first L against Chicago, then you come out, you beat Seattle, you beat Paris, you beat Dallas, who was that was the monkey on the back from the Los Angeles land, the last event we had in person, and then grand finals versus Florida, a team we've never played before. Uh, in a league match, obviously we scrim against them, and we have a lot of VOD tape that we watch on them, but it was our first time, and so that was it was interesting to see kind of how that ended up going, and it was really interesting to see. I know you guys haven't seen it yet, but you will. Show you guys the saga that we're still doing the docu series. We're still kind of following the action as it goes, and that's something that I'm really excited to share with everyone, because it's super interesting to see kind of the perspectives on that and what it means.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And it is interesting because going into the weekend, I didn't know really what to expect in terms of how the online environment might impact. And I heard several of the podcasts followed the match weekend with some of the people in the COD scene talking about it, where a lot of them are making the point that okay, three of the four teams, or really all four of the final four teams, were teams that had been to a finals.
Mm-hmm.
Chicago and Dallas have obviously both won a tournament. Us and Florida had been in finals in the previous two tournaments. So you still had essentially the point that a lot of the people, the personalities and content, they were biased. We love RØKKR, but the non-biased folks talking about it all seem to center their view around the fact that you still had essentially the top four teams, top 4 or 5 teams are still the top four teams.
Yeah, that's super interesting to see it laid out that way. I think and the point you touched on too with the league, learning from that weekend. I mean, from what I heard, they've done everything they possibly can in this situation to make sure that it's the most competitive situation when we are playing these matches. Yes, online is always a better atmosphere, but I mean, like I said, given the state of the world right now, I just feel dang lucky that we still get to see these matches and we still get to create around it. I mean, this maybe kind of gets us into our next point. RØKKR Royale. That's something really cool that I wanted to make sure we talked about, and I think most of the people probably listening to this were aware that it happened, but in case you weren't, we threw a $40,000 charity tournament on Call of Duty Warzone, called RØKKR Royale. We had some celebrity type folk, like musicians, some athletes, influencers, streamer people, teaming up with people from RØKKR. I played in it. Don't want to talk about it. It wasn't my best day on the sticks, but it was fun. It was such a cool thing that we did, and all of the money that in prizing, so $40,000 was distributed against or amongst all of the teams and the placements for the tournament. But it all went to charity. It all went to COVID-19, based charities, and that's something that's super important. And on top of that, we raised money that was then matched by our ownership on our Twitch channel, and it was super cool to see the stream come together to host that type of a tournament. And I think it really got like me and maybe hopefully some of the fans excited about the prospect of events like that in the future, whether they're more Warzone based tournaments, whether we do other types of tournaments. That's something that's really important to me and to us. Brett, kind of give your perspective. Why did we do RØKKR Royale, and why should we keep doing it?
Yeah, good question. The way I look at it, and the way we essentially looked at it as we were preparing for it, a lot of people right now are asking how can we help? How can we be a part of a solution? right? Like none of us are going to go hop in the lab and develop a vaccine, but if we can raise a little money for charity, if we can create some positivity for people, whether it's through an event like RØKKR Royale, whether it's with our regular matches or just content on a day-to-day basis, those are really important things. And so if you look at it from sort of the 10,000-foot view, sports have always been about community and bringing people together. And we certainly see that with our incredible fans that have rallied around the team, that were coming to watch parties at Billy's, that are now coming to Discord, coming to our online watch parties. We just see the interaction with the fans every time we do something, and that stuff is awesome. And if we can create some positivity, make people, we say it over and over again with staff, if we can make people laugh a little bit, put a smile on somebody's face, help to put somebody's mind beyond the things that that they might be focusing on a day-to-day basis, that's a huge win. And I don't know about you, but for me, the Sunday of our match, Dallas, uh, and then Florida, the semifinals and finals, that was really the first day in probably 6 or 7 weeks that I didn't think about coronavirus or the way that it's impacting at all. It was we were so into the matches, it was so intense that for me personally was able to forget about those things for a day. And that was just very refreshing personally, right? From a just from a mindset standpoint, to almost feel like we just totally got away from it. And I don't know how many staff felt the same way or how many fans felt the same way, but that was a huge positivity.
Yeah, definitely. I think, to touch on the virtual watch party for those who are unaware, on our Discord channel, we held a watch party, a virtual watch party. Anyone can come. And obviously, some of you guys may know we were holding, in person watch parties for away weekends that were happening. So, for instance, during the Atlanta and the Los Angeles weekends, we were gathering at this place called Billy's on Grand in St. Paul. This is obviously way before like the whole stay at home order and all that stuff. Before that really hit earlier this year, and it was so awesome to be in person and watch the matches. Like there's people that are so enthusiastic about this. There's people who are kind of linking up at those things, and they're making new pals that maybe they're going to game with, and they found something in common, like Brett said, like with community, like you're there with other people. And so when everything went to kind of the virtual world, and we obviously cannot go to a bar or restaurant right now and hang out, so we were like, dude, let's do it virtually. We have Discord, we have this place that people are already coming, like our community's in there all the time, they're talking and chatting. Let's amplify it and put it in this. So we had people kind of typing to each other during the matches, communicating like, oh man, like that map was so crazy. What map is next? Are we good on that map? Like there's just talk about the matches, talk about everything like that. And then in between the maps, we actually had me and esports Doug, shout out to Doug. He was in there and we were kind of breaking it down as it was going. I think it actually made it kind of a super cool experience. And to your point, it really kind of helped me, and I hopefully helped the other people who were involved in that, maybe forget about some of the other things that are happening in the world, and giving them a place to not literally go, but virtually go and have a good time, and meet up with some like-minded people. I think it's actually a very social thing, some of the things that we're doing and implementing around this. And I think that's something that we're going to continue to do, whether it's with the RØKKR Royale tournaments and you get to view it and watch it, and be a kind of feel like you're a little bit a part of, something, especially with the charity aspect. And people were so generous in their donations and everything like that for everything. It was just, it was an awesome experience for what the situation we're all in. It's obviously tough, but I think we've so far we've tried to make the best of it, and we've tried to do what we can. And I think we're going to continue to do that. We're going to still have more virtual watch parties. We're going to think of ways to get people involved.
Yeah, and like you said at the start, we want to hear from fans, right, and see what do they want to see from the team from a point during this time. At the end of the day, we do these things for fans, right?
Yeah.
So we drop us a comment, shoot us a DM. Like we want to hear these things, and we want to try to tailor to what people want.
Yeah, we're very plugged in that aspect. I think even after the tournament, for Dallas, afterwards we were kind of tweeting out like, hey, we don't play again. We don't play Chicago. We play, in basically a month. What would you like to see from us in the meantime? And there was a lot of amazing content ideas that people tweeted at us. Some of them we are already doing. Some of them we could implement into things that could improve them. And some of them are brand spanking new. And, my focus, especially this week, is focusing on what those things are. How do we integrate them into what's going out? And how do we keep people connected? Because, I can't say it enough, so I'm sorry if it's repetitive, but I just feel super lucky that we're even able to create. It helps me. I think it might help some of the other staff that we're able to create during this time. And it also like helps to know, especially when you have that instant connection with the fans, whether it's the replies on Twitter or the folks in the Discord who are always so passionate. It really does feel like there's those people, like you start to see their names in the replies often. You're like, oh, I know that guy replied yesterday, like he's in it with us. It's actually a really cool and interconnected world, and I could go on about how esports and the communities around each esport kind of lead to that, but I think community is one of the number one things. So definitely, like as Brett said, and as we said at the beginning, if you still have more ideas or if you still like have things you'd want to see, definitely let us know, because we're all about making cool stuff first and foremost, and obviously making cool stuff that you guys enjoy. One thing I'm interested to see is how we kind of keep going, because now I feel like we've spent the last month maybe recalibrating a little bit. I don't know if that's fair to say, but we're recalibrating a little bit, because obviously, we were anticipating holding another event in May down at the Armory in Minneapolis. Obviously, that's no more. Very excited for the next time we can all hold an event and be somewhere together cheering. But in the meantime, we've recalibrated to fit into this new world, and it's interesting. What do you think, Brett, is the number one thing that we can do to stay connected with people during this time?
Yeah, well, to give people a little bit of a sense of what we talked about as staff throughout this process, but also before we call it parted ways, the last day we were all in the AQ. What we've said to the staff is family comes first, your health and safety comes first. Those two things are the most important in everybody's life. We don't want anybody to confuse that with. But beyond that, we want to continue doing the things that have gotten us here. This team has shown an incredible amount of hustle, and just everybody works so hard, whether it's the players or the coaches or the staff. And we think back to when we announced the team on July 1st, and in those first couple months, every step along the way, we've done the absolute best we can with whatever hand we're right. Early on, when it was just Ashley, you and I recording free videos about free agency in a poorly lit conference room. We did, that was what we had the capability to do, and that's what we did. Right? And Annie came on board, and the lighting got a little bit better, and we stepped up our game a little bit. And then every step along the way, hiring a staff, putting the team together, we've consistently raised the bar on things we were doing, right? But the theme has always been the same, that everybody just works their butt off and is going to do the best that they can with that that they're doing. And that doesn't, it's the same thing. It's the same mentality now. And whether that's doing a RØKKR Royale or finding a different way to do our game day content, it's just thinking about the things that we did and that we enjoyed doing as staff when we were in the office every day. What's the equivalent of that in the new online environment, and just trying to do those.
Yeah, we've always been about creating. I think that's something that I've obviously always instinctively wanted to do. I think it matches well with obviously Gary V. He's minority owner in the team here. He's helped kind of implement that culture, and we even saw, and man, I don't even know if I want to say this because it just sounds so like I'm throwing shade, but it's more just that I'm proud of the things that we've done. During like the free agency time, not many other teams were making content. It's real easy to just be like, yeah, well, we'll do that, when it's a better time to do that. there's always a good time to do content. It always should be a thing that you're doing. And I think, and I'm definitely see some great stuff coming out of the other franchises during this time. And this is definitely an unprecedented time where things are difficult, but it's still time to do that. It's real easy to say, yeah, well, the world's in the state that it's in, and it's easy to just kind of lean back and say, we'll kind of wait for this to blow over. No, man, we want to do cool stuff and keep people engaged. That's what we've been about since day one.
Yeah, it's just as important, if not more important, for us as an organization to be communicating directly with fans. And you've said it before, esports right now has a unique platform to to continue the product. It doesn't look exactly the same, but every esports team and league right now is thinking about how do we continue our competition? How do we continue to put product in front of all of us? Believe that there is the opportunity here to reach people that maybe would not tune into an esport event under previous circumstances, or it's sort of on their radar, but it's not at the top of the list to tune into. Um, so that's something that we're thinking a lot about as a staff is how do we start to reach that audience? How do you do it in the right way? Every business, every organization needs to make sure that they're approaching a situation like this in a way that that is just human, right? I mean, we're all people. We all understand what's going on, and I think anybody that side of the human factor here, regardless of what industry you're in, is not going to last long. Um, but with all those things said, it really just comes back to continuing to put the content out there and put your product out there in the best possible, given whatever the situation is. Find it.
Yeah, I think it's just awesome to be a part of. And gosh, yeah, with everything going on, I just feel super lucky that I still get to do awesome things every day. And I really do. Maybe I'm getting a little sappy, but I really do feel like it's awesome to see those same people in the Discord, to see those same people on Twitter. When someone new comes in the Discord, you're like, what up, dude? And then you end up seeing him or her, interacting all the time. And you're like, oh, wow, like, it's happening. And I think another part that I think is pretty interesting about this time is a lot of people now have more time to actually, whether it's video game or kind of get into the esports side of thing, like you mentioned. I mean, you're seeing professional athletes are now playing with these, pro gamers. It's super awesome to see. They're getting into it. It's kind of being recognized as like, oh yeah, this is a real thing. It does make sense. It is competition at the heart of it. Like it is a sport. It's just virtual, And so I think that point's getting across to a lot of people. And one thing that I thought was just super cool about the last weekend, the Dallas event, although it wasn't at Dallas, it was still the Dallas event online. Seeing us like on Fox 9 News, not being covered in the sense of like, oh hey, look at this like novelty thing happening. We were covered in that segment like a real sport. And unfortunately, because of how we got to the point where this is relevant, it kind of shows where this is always a relevant thing. Esports has always been happening in the background, and now that it has had the opportunity to get more eyes on it and be covered like a traditional sport was super cool to see.
Yeah, absolutely. It reminded me of a conversation that we had early on. This might have been August or even earlier when we were trying to get media coverage around the team. And we always had a focus with our media outreach of looking for them to cover the competitive aspect, right?
Mm-hmm.
As you alluded to, most of the media coverage from mainstream media of esports is sort of hey, look at this video game, right?
Yeah.
Or it's the business media looking at business and the marketing of it, which obviously all of that is important and we embrace, that media coverage as well. But we've always had an eye toward working to get coverage of the competitive side so that people that are just sort of tuning in understand that this is a team that's here to win, that's here to
Hmm.
compete, just the same way that any sport, right? Just because it's people playing video games doesn't mean that the players are any less competitive or that any of the fans are less, you know, living and dying with every, with every point and every hard point, right? It's,
Yeah, it's
it's every bit what
intense.
it is for tradition for any sport. And at the time, back to the original point, I made the comment that I look forward to the day when we would have local media, traditional sports media, throwing some shade our way because of something that happened in the match. And Friday night of the Dallas, Fox 9 covered our match against the Huntsmen, complete with the anchor making a little bit of a snide remark of us blowing
Oh,
the 5-0 lead in
the
Search and
full
Destroy.
sale, man.
And this the reporter that covers us from Fox 9 actually plays Call of Duty, and he's super knowledgeable. He did a great job breaking
Yeah,
matches.
Pierre definitely gets it.
Yeah, Pierre is phenomenal. Um, and then he throws it back to the anchor, and the anchor's like, "Yeah, they really blew that lead." And at first, I'm like, "Oh, come on, man!" And it's like, "Wait, you know what? That's I'm not
Touche.
happy we lost. I don't want to be reminded of it, but there's some relevancy in local media taking a shot at you."
Yeah, I
Uh,
mean, and that's how traditional sports can get covered
yeah,
too, and so it feels good to get that fair treatment a little bit, and obviously the circumstance for how that ended up happening is rough, but I think it might even become, now that esports is on people's radar because it is happening. Hopefully, I'm hoping that when things kind of realign and you start to see sporting events again in the future, people still consider esports as like, oh wow, this is a thing, especially Minnesotans and following Minnesota RØKKR. And I think just I mean, Minnesotans are so passionate about their sports teams anyway. I could go on and on about the Vikings, been watching them forever. It's I love that same passion is starting to come through for our team.
and when you think about the arc of the media, right? And so there's a little bit of an insight for fans into how we've essentially been observing it. Our perspective is we want to make sure that local media knows that we're still competing, knows that this team is still playing competitive matches, but also you can't force anything down somebody's, right, especially during a time like this. The media has to sort of decide whether they want to cover a story.
For sure.
And the as we look at the arc of media coverage over the course of the past month, or they're called the sports media coverage, the initial stories when starting in mid March, when all of the leagues went on their hiatus, including ours. The immediate story was the unprecedented full stop of sports in America, and that was the all-consuming media story for several days. And then the media story started to pivot to how how the situation was impacting individual athletes. And we saw a lot of stories as well about how people were staying active at home and that sort of thing. And my sense is that now media is turning a corner and starting to look at, okay, yes, those stories are still important, and the impact of coronavirus on sports and on society will always be a media story well after we all, for years,
For
right?
sure.
But the sense is definitely there that media across the board are want some stories that are not 100% focused on the COVID-19. Right, people are getting that news all day, every day. There, people are probably starting to look to consume media and consume some things that don't necessarily directly tie it. And I think that's where we'll see both nationally and like locally increased media interest in esports and the competitive side of what we're doing. We'll see how it plays out over time. That's at the very least, we're going to make the information available and make ourselves available and make our players available, and the media can decide whether they want to cover.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's something that, I mean, you've definitely had like much more of a hand, you and Annie and the PR team kind of making sure that we're able to be available. But I think that hits the nail on the head. We're not sitting here like, cover us now. It's just, hey, this is the thing that's happening.
Yeah,
Uh, Check it out. And the fact that Fox 9 and some other, amazing kind of news stories that we've seen come out as far as esports goes, I think it's the right move. It helps people. I mean, I think at the end of the day, when we go back to it, sports and esports, these are community things. These are things that the community can get into, and that's kind of like what we need right now. That's my opinion on it, at least. Obviously there's a lot to be said about how we all get through this together, but I think at the core of it for me, that competition aspect, that thing that we can do to kind of escape, like you said, that Sunday where we had those two crazy matches versus Dallas, and then obviously making the grand finals again. Like, I didn't think about anything else other than the search and destroy strategies, or what dom map is coming up next, why is that important, and just really getting into it. And then obviously in the Discord with everybody getting into it. So I don't know, I'm super optimistic as I can be about what we're doing, and the kind of in relation to the times that we're in. But I'm still, just as enthusiastic as I've always been about putting out great stuff for people to watch, and now more than ever.
absolutely. That's I feel like that's the attitude of everybody in the organization, and that's how we've gotten to the point we're at, and that's how we'll keep going.
Yep, keep this thing moving forward. Awesome. I think this can wrap up the podcast. I would love to hear from you guys. So you can listen to this podcast anywhere that you listen to podcasts, iTunes, Spotify, wherever. Find us on Anchor. There's a ton of different places to listen. Also, if you're on YouTube, hello. You got to see Brett's amazing set. He's got amazing artwork from his children. He's got a couple RØKKR items. Pretty jealous you got that cut out there, because I freaking love that thing. I think it was from launch event in January. Super awesome. Um,
As the last person to close down the HQ, I was able to scavenge a few things. Like, well, nobody's going to need this rocker head for a couple months. I'm gonna take this one home with me.
Yeah, there you go. You got some props and some stuff. Man, I miss the office, dude. Like, I mean, I
Yeah,
feel like I get a lot done while working from home, as backwards as that sounds, but I definitely miss the face to face, and I miss that atmosphere. That's one thing that's missing. Is, I mean, we still have a great talks and great meetings and great calls every day, and we try to, see each other once in a while, but like this, like webcam, but I miss the atmosphere, man. Anyway, not to get too caught up off on my own there, but yes, if you're watching, make sure to subscribe, comment. This is where we'll be taking, some ideas for either content you'd love to see or guests you'd love to see on the podcast. We're thinking like industry guests, maybe some people that are involved in the CDL, like a caster. Maybe if we can, snag either ownership or management from another esports team or another franchise in the league, other players, coaches, personalities, influencers, people, anyone who's in the esports industry, or especially CDL, we would really love to hear from them and how they kind of work their whatever they've got going on. So feel free to give some comments down below. And if you're listening on audio, go ahead and leave a review on iTunes. We really appreciate that. Anyway, thanks so much for listening. We'll catch you next week because we'll be back. See you then.